says this is the first time we have tried this, and we're the first political party to engage with the diaspora in the election campaign. And that's an indication of how important our diaspora are to us. It's the Irish living abroad. It's Irish citizens living abroad. It's intergenerations of Irish who have supported us, and not just Sinn Féin, but Ireland throughout the centuries. And it gives you a sense of the power. I mean, the Irish abroad have shaped the Ireland of today, whether it was in terms of resistance, whether it was in terms of the Easter Rising, whether it was there would have been no Good Friday Agreement without the Irish abroad, and that includes England, the US, Canada, Australia, and elsewhere. And on Brexit, demonstrated again the power of the lobby, because the British government were hard set on imposing a hard border across our country and on doing the progress of the peace process. And our international friends and supporters who support the Good Friday Agreement, who support peace and unity, came to the fore to protect it. So there's power in your hands to shape the destiny of Ireland. And although we're doing this in a time of great opportunity for us in terms of the election, we also want to have the diaspora engaged beyond Friday. And we want the diaspora to be involved as we step our way through building a new and united Ireland. We want to hear your views for what that looks like. We want you to support that progress for us. So that's just a bit of context. So although we're talking about the elections, we're looking for support on the elections. We also want to stay in touch, and we believe you have a vital role to play, not just this week, but in the months and years to come. So without further ado, I do also have to acknowledge Alan McConnell, who's on from the President of Friends of Sinn Féin in Canada, Mark Guilfoyle from the Friends of Sinn Féin in the USA, and Joe Dwyer, who will be known to many of the people from Britain, who heads up our desk in London and has been an activist for a long time. So if we are asked any specific questions, I might be calling on Joe to type in the answers or to text me if I get caught out. So I'd like to introduce you to my good friend and comrade, Rose Conway Walsh, the TD, if you haven't already guessed, for Mayo, a proud Mayo woman, but also has an interesting story in terms of her own life experience in immigration. So Rose, over to you about where we are in the elections and hopefully what we're looking to achieve.
Great, Gar míle maith Ciaran agus Fáilte Galéir, Alan, Mark and Joe, and everybody else who's joined us this evening. It's wonderful to be here. I'm coming into you from Castlebar. I'm from Belmullet and Ballycroy, as Ciaran Stanton will know if nobody else. So that's obviously Mayo along the western seaboard. I'm delighted to be here this evening. And I just this is something that's of real interest to me, because I spent over a decade myself in London. Now, when I went to London, it was because there was no work here when I left school. So there was no chance of getting a job here. I mean, people are leaving now because of housing in the main. So there are jobs available here, but people just cannot find a place to live. And that's one of the key problems we have at the moment. But I should say, I suppose, in terms of myself as well, it was not only me that left. My parents also left. They were forced to immigrate to London. And indeed, my grandparents were forced to immigrate to London. And now my son has immigrated to London in the last number of weeks. So you've had 1, 2, 3, 4 generations of us who make up the diaspora, if you like. And I always felt, as being a member of the diaspora, that I wanted to have more of a say in what was happening in my own country, because like many of you, the intention will be to return. And I wanted to be able to return. And that's why I suppose I returned just after the Good Friday Agreement. And there was an opportunity then for me to get involved further with Sinn Féin. And that's when I ran for election first. It was in 2004 in Mayo, and then got elected in 2009 to the local authority, and then the Seanad, and then to the Dáil in 2020. I'm the party spokesperson for public expenditure. But I think it's really, really important for the diaspora to have a say in what's happening in your own country. And I suppose as a party, we are very conscious of that, and that's why, as Ciaran rightly said, we are facilitating. We want you to be engaged in this election as well. It's a key time for the diaspora, but for us here, we have an opportunity. We have a 100-year opportunity here to change the government. We've had, as you'll know, a mixture of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael over the years. So there's an opportunity for change now. And you can see here, even in the polls in the last number of days, where we have started to go in the right direction again in the polls. So we met as a front bench today in Dublin earlier on with Mary Lou MacDonald and with Michelle O'Neill to discuss how we were going to handle the next few days. And what we want to do is for Sinn Féin to lead the government here. And we want that in order to give people the opportunity, indeed to give all of you the opportunity, if you want to return to Ireland, to give you the opportunity to do that. So one of our major policies is around making housing affordable. And we have, well, Ono Bren, our housing spokesperson, has written the book on that in terms of how we would do it. We have a real housing emergency here at the moment. It's impacting every area of life. Like where I come from as well in Balmullet, so many people have immigrated, so many young people have immigrated over the last couple of years, over the months and over the last couple of years because of the housing situation. So we have a real substantial policies around housing, and it's really based on the building of 300,000 in the term of government. It's an investment of 39 billion there, and we have worked that out in terms of rents, in terms of affordable housing, private housing and social housing. And you can get access to the full housing policy on our website as well. The other thing we would do is, you remember the time of austerity when the tax was brought in, the hated universal social charge was brought in. So we would, and we have committed to as a party, to abolishing that for those who are earnings up to 45,000 euro. And again, that is to benefit the average paid workers here. Childcare is another big problem here for young families, and indeed young families who are returning here. And that's why, as a party, we're committed to providing affordable childcare for 10 euro per day per child, and major investment into the childcare sector so that it doesn't end up in a situation where people either cannot go out to work or people are paying a second mortgage for childcare. And at the other end of it, and many of you will maybe have elderly relatives who are living here, we may have carers. There's a means test for carers allowance. And Mary Lou MacDonald was absolutely adamant on this, that we had to abolish the means test for carers allowance, because too many carers are looking after people 24/7 and they're not getting 1 cent for it because somebody else in the house may have earnings. So all of those things, I think, will not only benefit people who are living here, but also benefit the diaspora as well, or people who want to return. And for people returning, and many of you will be able to identify with this, because people who've already returned have found it difficult to access services or find out exactly how to kind of basically get reset up or get set up again. And that's why we would establish a one-stop shop for returning Irish citizens. And the process would begin in that before somebody was returning home. So it would be put in place before their arrival. And some of the practical steps around that would be the speedy provision of a PPS number for returning Irish centres, but advice on the access of relevant benefits, of schools, of third level education, of housing and healthcare as well. That rather than trying to navigate your way around a system And the most thing people who come from London in particular would say to me is, oh my God, it's so complicated compared to what it is abroad. And I suppose I only have London to compare it with. And so it can be quite complicated. So if you have a one-stop shop to do that, I think it really will enable people to prepare for coming back. And hopefully we'll have a Sinn Féin government and more people will prepare to come back, because we need workers here. We absolutely need our workers to come back across the public service. So whether it be nurses, doctors, plumbers, electricians, right across the board, we need people. But the other thing as well that we want to do is the recognition for relevant work experience and qualifications of Irish citizens that they have earned while they're abroad, particularly in the fields of education, of health, and in trades as well. That needs to be streamlined much better than it is. So those qualifications are recognised straight away. And also, and Ciaran Stanton again will identify with this because he's been on about this for years, but the mutual recognition of driving licenses is important as well. Now, we have mutual recognition in the north, and I suppose that speaks to why we need an all-island approach to many of these things as well. So they're just some of the practical things on your return here. But the other thing is, for those of you who may not intend to return to Ireland, is the voting rights for the diaspora for the presidential elections. And that is crucial, again, for Irish citizens living abroad, that you have a say on who your president is going to be. Indeed, for our citizens in the north who cannot elect their own president, is it just a strange situation. I know my brother is an American, he's American citizenship since he drove the carriages in New York. Peter Paul, so he can vote in he can vote for an American president, but somebody living in any of the 6 counties cannot vote for their own president. So it doesn't make sense whatsoever. And that's certainly one of our policies. Now, we would have to hold a referendum for that, but we commit to holding a referendum within the lifetime of the next Dáil to facilitate people from the north and the diaspora to do that. The other thing is that we would do is establish forums for the diaspora to have a say in building United Ireland. And that is crucially important. Now, those of you who are on here from America will know as well the big part that America has played in, whether it be the Good Friday Agreement, before that, most recently as well, in terms of the Legacy Act, in terms of Brexit, and so many other things. The crucial part that the diaspora have played, many people who are connected originally to this country as well, who have played in all of that. So we certainly want to have that. Now, we would also appoint a minister for the diaspora as well. And I think that would be significant. That has been promised for some time from governments, but it has never came to any fruition. And I do want at this point for us to recognise and to pay tribute to former Senator Billy Lawless from Chicago. Billy was a friend of mine. We served together in the Shannon. He passed away recently, and I want to extend my sympathy, my condolences to all his family and all his friends. I know we'll be having a commemorative event for Billy in Galway at the beginning of December as well, which I'll be attending there. But I suppose I want to say to you around your place in building a United Ireland. There are many exciting things happening here at the moment, right across the country in Irish unity and the conversations around Irish unity. As recently as last week here in Mayo, we've been doing a piece of work on women and the Constitution within the Good Friday Agreement Committee. But UCD, that's University of Dublin, and Aberdeen University are also working with women to have women's voices and have had hard-to-reach voices heard, informing the Constitution that will shape the future of our island. And there's nobody more important than the diaspora in having a say in how we shape that constitution. We have done some work as well on the Good Friday Agreement on the finance and economics of a united Ireland as well. So we will continue that. We have also committed to having a whole of government approach, but having a department within the Department of An Taoiseach that will take responsibility for Irish unity as well, and for examining reunification and preparing, because all parties agree that we need to prepare, but we need to get down to that preparation, to having it done in a real and tangible way, and having a framework where that work can be facilitated within that. So we're adding additionality to that work all of the time. So it's a very exciting space to be in. And obviously we will have the citizens assemblies on reunification as well. And that will give us a, but it's having as broad as possible of a say into the future of Ireland on that. So as I say, it's an exciting time for us. I want to just see if is there any other questions there before I?
Yeah, I have a bunch of questions here if you'd like. Yeah.
Just before we jump into the questions, and I'm just looking, there's ones about housing and the election. But Rose, there's something that just struck me from what you were saying there, and going through the generations of immigration that your family had experienced. The common denominator for me in that is 100 years of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael rule. And it's always struck me, and as I travel through the US and Canada and elsewhere where you're meeting members of the diaspora and also Irish people abroad, is the Irish government pay lip service to the Irish abroad? So it'll be out at St. Patrick's Day and be told how great you are. But what struck me is by refusing to extend the voting rights, which was promised in 2016, it's a case of being seen but not heard. And I think the big challenge for us going forward, if Sinn Féin are in government, is how Rose has outlined how we're going to change that. But in the next 5 days, there's an opportunity for the diaspora to be heard. So it is a case of reaching out to your families in Ireland, to friends in Ireland, to supporters in Ireland, to anybody you've met, and just say to them, your hopes for a united Ireland rest with Sinn Féin being a government. Your hopes to return home rest with the United Ireland, or rest with Sinn Féin a government. So it's that key piece that you have got a voice, and you need to find, the space needs to be found to make that heard. So it is about posting on social media, tagging Sinn Féin into it, sending videos to admin@sinnfein.ie. But your voice, it's to have your voice heard over the next 5 days. And as I say, we will commit to continue, so your voice will be heard as we progress for Irish unity. So, Greg, you have a job in your hands to try to pull these number of questions together.
They're great questions coming in. Thank you for everyone. Again, a quick reminder: if you have a question for the panelists, just drop them in the Q&A. I'm going to put a couple of these together. We have Ed and Ben and Bernard asking about elections. Perhaps we can shift our heads into more recent election news. How are we finally going to get Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil out, or what's the latest polling that shows us 2020? Any insights on the crosstabs, or what kinds of arguments could really close the gap here in the final days?
I think Greg, thanks for those questions as well. I think people start to focus now on where they're going to go. People have a very clear choice, and I think if you're communicating with your own families here and your friends here, people have a choice, and it's very simple. We either have more of the same in housing, more of the same in health, more of the same for disabilities, and indeed more of the same for the Irish diaspora, or we have something different. And I think that's what's focusing people's minds, that they actually have the power. The power is given back. So the power is collapsed and it's given back to the people on the 29th of November, and that they would use that they will use that for change. We're heartened by the polls. It reflects what I'm engaging hearing on the ground as I canvass across Mayo, that people have had enough of the same thing. And I suppose they're looking at it in a way of the 100 years, yes, but this current government have been in Fine Gael have been in government for the last 14 years. Now, if they get another 5 years here, or 13 to 14 years, and they get another 5 years, it means that every child born in Ireland will know nothing except for a Fine Gael government. And I think no matter what your politics is, that is not a healthy situation to be in. And that's why we are offering the positive change across all of those things. So the polls, as you rightly say, are 2020 and 22. And there will be 2 more polls in the coming days, and I expect them to be good news for Sinn Féin as well. The important thing is people get out to vote as well, that people kind of see that the difference that their vote makes. If somebody has been away or intends to come back and been away for less than 18 months, they can come back to vote. Remember in the referendums before, where people came home to vote, people who are eligible to vote in the elections came home to do that. But it's, as Ciaran said, it's not even about, actually getting home, but it's about using social media as well, and using just the power of, how we communicate in our WhatsApp groups and all that, to encourage people to come out to vote, to have their say over the next few days, and to be part of a really historical occasion where we can change the government. Somebody reminded me today, it's 100 years since we had a Christmas election, and Sinn Féin were elected by a landslide at that time as well. So, or 107 years or something like that. So it really is time now. There was a couple of things, Greg, I just wanted to say in additional for the diaspora that Sinn Féin are committed to as well. And one of them is opening additional consulates in cities where there are growing Irish diaspora as well. And that would obviously include Australia, but also upon Ireland's diplomatic opening up Ireland's diplomatic presence, including a review to expand in the network of Irish embassies in the Southern Hemisphere as well, but an increase in the funding for Culture Ireland by 2 million there as well. I very much see, and I look at it, like, I don't look at just the island. I look at all of our diaspora, and I know my colleagues do as well within the Sinn Féin party. And I think sometimes that's what makes us different. So it's not just about taking from the diaspora all the time. It's about putting the diaspora front and center of all that we do here. And we can only be enriched by that, in terms of our policy making, in terms of our focus, what needs to be done, the richness of the experiences, the education, everything else that we have within the Irish diaspora is huge. So why would we not embrace that? We certainly embrace it as a party within Sinn Féin.
Thank you for that.
It's a bit of a long-winded answer.
No, it's great. There's a lot of curiosity and questions about how to engage our parties in the South, afraid of a united Sinn Féin. How do we highlight some of the failures of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil? So there is a lot of curiosity and interest around this. If we could pivot to we might come back to some of those political detailed questions, but we do have questions about housing. What about, is private equity buying up homes? What are the reasons that there is a housing shortage? Why are we here?
That's a good point. Because we stopped building houses, basically. We stopped building social housing. So instead of that, the local authorities under the government policy set about the privatization of that, if you like. So we transfer €1 billion every year under the housing assistance payment and the raw scheme as well. So it kind of abdicated government of any responsibility to build social housing. If you look at any country, you will see the level of social housing is about 25, 26% upper in some countries. And we have about 9%. So there's a huge gap there. That's one of the things. The other thing was when after austerity and after the Fianna Fáil crash the economy, we had a situation where the vulture funds were invited in. So the real estate investment funds. So you have the situation now that you will have, not only do they hold thousands of apartments and that, so you'll have a young couple trying to, haven't saved up their deposit, trying to buy a house or an apartment, and their competition is a very wealthy investment fund. So we have commodified housing. And that is why Sinn Féin and us as a party are trying to pull that back. And our affordable housing scheme will do that to an extent where the prices of housing. So what the government is basically saying is that a house up to €500,000 is an affordable house. Now that is way beyond the reach of a normal guard, a teacher, somebody working in the public service, whoever. So we are saying that we will use the model that's used in some other countries for the affordable section of our housing plan to supply the serviced land. So you'll have the land and you'll have the services. So basically that will pull down the price of those houses to 250,000 to 300,000, making them affordable for people. There are a couple of conditions, Greg, on that. And that is that you wouldn't be able to sell the house for a huge profit, but you would be able to leave it to your children, your grandchildren. You'd be able to do whatever repairs you need to do. If you needed to go abroad for a couple of years to work abroad, you could rent it, but it would have to be rented at the local authority rate as well. So that way we would be building up a stock of affordable houses as well to address the situation. We have over 14,500 people homeless as we are. 4,000 of those are children. For the small population we have, that is just off the scale. And it's not only that, but we have so many people here in Mayo and in other counties who are living in situations that are wholly unsuitable. I had one mother from Belmullet who is pregnant. She has no accommodation. She has a young child of 9 who's going to the local school, who is being sent right now as we speak to Charlestown for emergency accommodation. And that's happening all of the time. So families are being displaced, disrupted, just because they can't have a home. So that might give you an idea of what's happening here. But we have the solutions to be able to fix it. But how we got into this in the first place is absolutely astounding. There was no need to get into this if we had the right policies. It's an accumulation of failed policies in housing.
Yeah, and I think that's the key piece, because when the southern state was impoverished, they were still building houses and people had homes. They mightn't have jobs and had to immigrate, but you always had a home guaranteed in Dublin up until the 70s. So these are very much government-made problems, and the solution is not found with those who made them. The solution will be found with ourselves.
And you see, Ciaran, just the thing on that is that immigration constantly is put forward as the solution. So we have a complete failure by government in housing policy, and that's people are being forced to immigrate. It is not the solution, and immigration is made the reality, if you like. So, it is the reality, but it's normalized. And that should not be the case. People like my son and other people and his friends and everyone else should have the choice to be able to prosper and to live in their own country. And that's the type of an island we want to create, Sinn Féin wants to create.
Thank you. That's a very insightful answer with great details, and as well as a clear vision of how we can move ahead in that area. Rose, I appreciate that. And Ciaran, there's a lot of questions coming in, so I'm going to be combining a couple as we are facing about 10 minutes left on our call. I'm grateful for all of your questions. A lot of these questions are asking, what specifically can diaspora do to make an impact? And sometimes they might be asking about how to persuade friends if they're considering voting independent or other smaller parties. How do we talk to our friends about why unity is important as opposed to some other more concrete issues? But what is the role of the diaspora? How can we from far away have a direct, what sort of impact can we make, and how do we do that?
I think, Greg, it's about having your voice heard. So people on this call will have different methods. So it might be, in your workplace, contacting your friends at home, whether it's on your WhatsApp groups, whether it's on your social media profiles, and what I'd really ask you to do is to get people to think. It's not to tell people what to do, but get them to think about, firstly, about how their country has failed them in so many ways, whether it's somebody who has a disability, who's a carer, who's struggling with the cost of living, or somebody struggling to access basic health care or to have a home. But also it's about opportunity. It's about opportunity of a different island that we can have. We're at this real precipice where we have never had the opportunity as a nation to look at the type of island we could create that would serve our values and our vision and the vision of 1916. And indeed, it's very simple. You go back to the proclamation. If we were to fulfill everything in the proclamation, then we would have the type of Ireland that certainly that Sinn Féin and that we are striving to generate. So it's about getting people excited, motivated, and inviting them to be part of this historical change across the island. That's what gets me up every day, Greg, is to, the possibility of what we can be. We have a great, great nation and we have a great diaspora, and together we can create something that will live way beyond any of us. And we, when we inherit, when we had partition, and partition has created such problems for this island, but we never had the opportunity to sit back and to think about what we wanted. It was always about incremental change. And I just would say, in relation to independents and independents running in this election, now there are many fine independents, but mostly in my experience in the Dáil is that the independents vote with the government. And as somebody reminded me last night, was actually from Achill, he said, I watch them all the time. He said, and anytime you have a vote of no confidence in a minister, the independents will all crush in, behind it. And I would say vote independent if you want to tweak things a little bit. But if you want the fundamental lasting change that we can have, that looks after everybody and that protects people's rights and creates equality of opportunity, then invite people to be part of that. People have to vote Sinn Féin. They have to change the government to do that. I'd be the last person to dictate to anyone, but I would like people to think. And they're the kind of conversations that I have on the door with people. So it's about, it's about practical things in terms of the tactics you use to do that. It's about, posting their support for that on social media, identifying where they're from, where they're living, what future aspirations they have also, and just to share with one another. See if you get momentum behind this from the diaspora. It's a bit like governments know that young people in the main, too many young people don't vote, so they don't skew policies towards the people who don't make themselves heard or could make themselves heard better. You see, if the diaspora were to make themselves heard collectively across England, across Great Britain as a whole, Scotland, Wales, America, Australia, Canada, all of those countries, the power of all of that would be just fabulous. Like, even before we get voting rights, we have different ways of communicating that we want our voices heard and that we want something better. And that we can have something better. I think it's getting people to believe that as well, that we don't have to accept things the way they are.
Yeah, and Greg, just I know there's a number of questions there, and I'll try to just skim over one or two of them as well. But the key piece in dealing with independents and smaller parties, as Rose said, the systemic issue here is Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael have been in power for far too long, and voting for those smaller parties or independents, you're going to end up with Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael back in some coalition again. So we're running 71 candidates.
Mhm.
If we can maximize that vote, that puts us in the lead in terms of government formation. And of course, our first choice would be to be talking to parties of the left and progressive parties to form an alternative government without Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael for the first time. So for anybody who's considering voting for those smaller parties, say, where are you getting the biggest bang for your buck? And it is not electing one or two independents. It's about voting in a Sinn Féin-led government. So that's the key bit. And in terms of what the Irish diaspora can do on the Irish unity issue, there's a number of things. The first thing is if we're going to get a united Ireland, we have to secure unity referendums, which are provided for by the Good Friday Agreement, all governments say they support the Good Friday Agreement. If you support the Good Friday Agreement, you support the democratic right of the people north and south to determine their future. So let's secure that, and let's build the argument then for the cause of Irish unity. And the diaspora has been key to that. And my opening comments were that there wouldn't have been a Good Friday Agreement without the diaspora. It was the diaspora that moved the American administration, which moved the British administration, which moved unionism. So all of those are consequential. And the same with Canada, Australia, who invested in the International Fund. And the British, particularly the British Labour Party at the time, of course, was essential for the Good Friday Agreement. So you're going to be just as essential in securing that, making that call for the rights of the Irish people, north and south, to determine the future. And that's going to be a key piece. But we also want to hear from you about what a new Ireland would look like. And I know, Greg, I just spotted in my eyes, just to give a very quick update, there's people were asking about the legacy cases. So somebody asked about Rosemary Nelson. Rosemary Nelson had the public inquiry. Pat Finucane has been promised, his family after all these years have now been promised a public inquiry. We wait to see the details of that and how it's going to be handled. And as always, the devil will be in the detail, because the British government have resisted that for so long, because the collusion around the killing of Pat Finucane goes straight, we believe, to the cabinet table. And in terms of the legacy legislation, the Labour government in opposition said they would oppose it, that they would revoke it. They have yet to make good on that provision, and they're talking about retaining parts of it. So watch that space. And again, that is a part where the Irish diaspora across the world has been essential in ensuring that the British government honour their obligations. And that means revoking that legislation just as much as it means giving the power to the Irish people north and south to have unity referendums. So I just jumped the gun, Greg, got a couple of the questions.
No, I appreciate that. No, thank you. Keep tracking along there. If we have time for one more question, you think?
Well, it depends.
All right. Well, Rose spoke about being out in the doors. We've been out in the doors all week. And another question that came in, and what we hear in the doors is, does Sinn Féin have a plan to make the healthcare system better? How do we go from these long wait times to see someone to a better system? Which I know isn't a short answer, but an important answer.
Yeah, that is, and I mean, it is even in a county like Mayo, access to healthcare here has got increasingly worse under Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and it has come about when we talk about housing, but in health it's come about because of privatisation and centralisation. Now we realise that some treatments can only be delivered centralised. You need a real expertise there and all that. But what has happened is a lot of the regional hospitals have been either closed down or the beds being closed in them over the years. So we have an absolute comprehensive plan to address that, to introduce 5,000 additional beds and 2,600 beds in the community hospitals as well. Because as people get older, particularly in areas like this, in rural areas, people want to, if they have to go to hospital just for minor things, they want to be able to go in their own community and get basic services in their own community. So we could certainly do that. We have the plan together for it. But as well as that, we would offer public contracts to GPs, because access to GPs and access to dental care has become an increasing problem as well. So we would have public contracts for not only public contracts, but the option of public contracts for GPs as well. And obviously, we also want our doctors, I know qualified doctors who are living all over the world, we want them to come back, but we want them to come back into a system, a safe system, where you have safe staffing levels within the hospitals. And again, that can be done, increasing the places at university, and also looking at healthcare delivery on an all-island basis. Because we see a very good model of that in the All-Ireland Cancer Research project that do marvellous work. We have wonderful expertise both across the island and expertise in the diaspora. And that combined together to a system, we could have the most fantastic healthcare system here. We're working to a sláinte care to universal access to healthcare as well. So we have very surely, David Cullinan is our health spokesperson. we have shown clearly how that can be done. Like things like, and you might be familiar, or people who are in contact with family members from at home and that, around how home help has been privatized here as well. So people who want to stay in their homes, we have to facilitate that. So it's a joining up of social care, community care and acute care to be able to deliver the type of system that we want to be able to deliver on an all-island basis. Does that give you an idea?
No,
Yeah,
that was
it's-
excellent. I just knew
Comprehensive, yeah. Thank
right,
you.
just before we time out on this, and there has been a number of detailed questions about housing and about healthcare. We have quite extensive policies available on the Sinn Féin website. I think the housing policy is about 146 pages. I think David Cullinan's prescription for change is about 160 pages, and it's not a case of never mind the quality, feel the width. These are detailed policies which we want to enact in government. So for me, we've got the policies, we've got the people. Our front bench is better than any other front bench, as you can see from Rose tonight. And we are looking for the opportunity to put those policies into practice and make Ireland a better place and unite the country. And it comes back to this fundamental piece. We can't do this on our own. We need the diaspora involved in this campaign and to have your voice heard. Reach out and ask people to vote. If they're not going to vote themselves, if they've no intention of voting for themselves, ask them to vote for you and to vote for the Sinn Féin representatives. So we want your voice to be heard, and I hope tonight is the start of a further engagement with the wider diaspora. We do invest heavily in the US and Canada and Australia and Britain, but it's getting grassroots activists involved as well in this discussion. So our commitment, I think, will be, but I can give you tonight, is that we will continue these, and if there's a hunger for them, we will continue to do them at a regular session where we can bring in the wider diaspora to have a discussion about the issues of today. But we have 5 days. I almost feel very dramatic and say we have 5 days to save Ireland, we have 5 days to change Ireland. So that's the key piece for us. And then the next step, we can then talk next week and the week after about what happens when Sinn Féin's in government. So thank you for coming along from my perspective. Rose, do you want the final say? And Greg, do you want to just tidy up?
Well, no, I would just say, I suppose, grasp this opportunity for the historic change that we can bring about. We can be all part of that. And I would just say to you all, do keep in touch. You know, even if it's just for the small things, whatever, keep in touch. That is the way we build momentum, and that is the way we build something better that we can all be really proud of. But the next few days, the next number of hours are really crucial. I don't want to let this opportunity go. If you all do your bit in trying to bring about that change and encouraging others to take part in it as well, this can be something really, really good. And I really want to thank you for taking the time to join tonight. I know everybody has busy lives, and it was just a pleasure to be part of this.
Yes,
And Mayo
thank you.
for Sam.
Thank you, Rose and Ciaran, very much for taking the time, and for everyone on this call. Dozens of folks joined us from all over the world. There are more questions than we had time to get to tonight, which means that there's more enthusiasm. And as Ciaran said, we will certainly be looking at doing more of these in the future. As Rose said, it's about telling stories and making that contact and reaching out to people who may be able to vote on Friday's election, and making sure it is plain to them. It is very clear how important this moment is and the role we all play in making sure we make it happen. So thank you all for joining us this evening.
Okay, Garmila Magat.
Carmela?